I dragged myself to the laundromat on what felt like a typically gray Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Honestly, I had no idea if it was actually gray outside. It always feels gray in a laundromat that early on a Sunday. For the past year, this had become my routine. Before that, my wife handled the laundry in our basement. That was before she became my ex-wife. I moved out about a year ago, and 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Now that basement belonged to someone I only spoke to through lawyers, so I picked up a new habit fitting the local laundromat, just a mile from my apartment, first thing Sunday morning. Not because I liked getting up early, hell no, but because I wanted the chore done and over with. It became a ritual. Show up early, leave early, avoid the small talk, dodge the crowd. I mean, aren't Sunday mornings supposed to be for hangovers and half-read newspapers? I'd been hitting the same laundromat for about 9 months. Maybe I'd seen her before, maybe not. But this time, something caught my eye. One of the cartwheels she was dragging looked jacked up and maybe making it wobble side to side as she tried to pull it. The thing was overloaded with what looked like a week's worth of laundry. And she struggled one hand on the cart, the other trying to hold open the door. I was thumbing through the sports section, not paying much attention until that moment. Then something just moved in me. Reflex maybe, habit, or just a flicker of decency that hadn't been stomped out by the last year of hell. I tossed the paper on the seat, walked over, and held the door open. She looked up at me and hit me with the kind of smile that could reboot a man's heart. Perfect white teeth, warm brown eyes like something out of a toothpaste commercial and a Pixar movie, all at once. "Thank you, mister," she said in a sweet, small voice as she walked past, steering her cart toward the washers lined up on the far wall. I figured she had to be about 7 or 8 years old. Mixed race, maybe Hispanic. Long, curly brown hair, and this presence calm, focused, almost too composed for a kid that age. Charming. No other word for it. I actually glanced behind me, expecting to see her parents somewhere. Nobody. And suddenly I wasn't just curious, I was concerned. I watched as she started loading the washer. No sorting, just dumped it all in. Coloreds, whites, socks, just everything. Pulled some detergent from her cart, fed coins into the slot, and pressed the start button. Then she sat down, pulled a little teddy bear out of her backpack, and began whispering to it. The hum of the machine filled the room, steady and wet and mechanical. From across the room, I got a clearer look at her. Jeans, a long-sleeve shirt, and a pink jacket too thin for 40-degree weather, even inside. Her clothes weren't dirty, but they looked old, washed out. Like they'd seen more life than they should have. She was one small step above looking homeless. And yet, there was this peacefulness to her. Like she was used to this. Like this wasn't new or scary or strange to her at all. And that's what got to me. What kind of parents send a little girl alone to do laundry at 7 a.m.? Especially knowing, because I knew this too well, how cold and indifferent the world can be. I sat back down, my mind already churning. I couldn't shake the thought. I have kids too. They're probably still asleep, curled up in warm beds in that old house I used to call home. Something about the whole scene just didn't sit right with me. This little girl, alone in a laundromat before sunrise, doing a full load like it was no big deal. It pulled me right back into my own reality. My kids at that very moment were probably still asleep, warm and comfortable in their beds. The same beds in the same house I used to live in. The one I used to help pay for. Now it was just her house. My ex-wife's. They'd probably roll out of bed in an hour or two to the smell of pancakes, eggs, maybe even bacon. My 13-year-old son, Mason, has a thing for bacon. He could eat a pound without blinking. And my 15-year-old daughter, Claire, she's a pancakes and maple syrup type. Me, I was a waffles guy. Still am, but back then, Sunday morning breakfasts were our thing. Those mornings were fading fast into memory. Now just scenes from another life. A life that blew up the moment my wife, now ex-wife, decided that monogamy was optional. During a couples retreat, 3 other couples, long weekend at some fancy lake house, she pulled me aside and told me she was going to sleep with another man. Like it was a business transaction. No lies. No sneaking around. Just a heads up. He's rich, she said. He does this sort of thing. One night, no strings. Then we're done with it. I'll be faithful forever after that. She genuinely thought that telling me in advance made it not cheating, as if disclosure rewrote morality. But the kicker? She warned Meph I objected. If I made it ugly, she'd take everything. Half my money, half my stuff, the entire house. And worst of all, she'd poison my kids against me. And she meant it. When I refused to just accept it and pretend it never happened, well, she followed through. Took it all. The money, the house, and most brutally, she took my kids. Said I was selfish. Told them I'd abandon the family because of my pride. And damn it, they believed her. So yeah, now I get to sit in a laundromat eating M's for breakfast, while someone else makes my kids bacon and pancakes. I hadn't eaten since that sad hot dog I inhaled the night before at the bar. Washed down with a Mickey's and a Knicks loss. There was a vending machine on one wall, some off-brand snack thing next to a classic Coke dispenser. They probably got emptied out daily. Otherwise, I figured, someone would have smashed them to pieces long ago. I grabbed a Diet Coke and a pack of M's. Just as I was cracking the can open, I caught her looking at me. At least I thought she was looking at me, but then I realized, no, she was looking at my snacks. And something about that look quiet, hungry, polite, but desperate cut right through me. It was like a punch to the chest. Because I'm someone's father, I know that look. I walked over slowly, crouched beside her, and said softly, "Hey, would you like my Diet Coke and M's?" She lit up her back, straightened, eyes brightened, but then just as quickly, the joy drained from her face. She shook her head. "Mom says I'm not supposed to take food from strangers," she said quietly, "especially not men." My heart ached. "That's a really good rule, sweetheart," I said, nodding. "And you should always listen to your mom." I paused, then added, "Tell you what, I'll just put them here, on the chair next to you. If you want them, they're yours. If not, no big deal. I'll just go grab more for myself." I set them down gently and walked back to the machines, pretending like I wasn't watching her from the corner of my eye. I grabbed myself another Diet Coke, another bag of M's, and wandered back to my spot like nothing had happened. Unfolded a fresh newspaper and pretended to read it though, really. I was watching her from the corner of my eye, the way a parent watches a child without letting on. 5 minutes passed. Then, without a word or glance, she reached over, took the soda and candy, and started munching like it was the most natural thing in the world. She was quiet, focused. Just a little girl doing her laundry like an adult. I smiled into my newspaper. 90 minutes later, my clothes were clean and folded. I loaded my 2 laundry bags into the car and headed home. I didn't think much more about her that day. My head was wrapped up in all the usual noise errands, bills, trying to kill time. Truthfully, I didn't think about her again until the following Sunday morning when I pulled into the laundromat parking lot at the same miserable hour. I wondered if she'd show up again. And sure enough, around 7:30, there she waced in a frame, same overloaded cart, same stubborn rear wheel that made the whole thing wobble like a shopping cart from hell. I got up and held the door for her again. She gave me that same polite, "Thank you, mister," and headed toward the machines like clockwork. Same routine, same section of washers, and yep, same clothes. I waited until she got her laundry started, then casually made my way over and plopped down in the chair next to her. "I think your cart's rear wheel's still giving you trouble, huh?" I asked. "Mind if I try to fix it?" She gave me a tiny nod, not looking up, just busying herself with her teddy bear like they were in the middle of some important conversation. I tipped the cart over, checked the wheel. Sure enough, it was bent on the axle and managed to straighten it with some pressure and a little cursing under my breath. I rolled it back and forth to test it. Smooth now. "Instant wagon repair," I said, brushing my hands off. "Free of charge." She looked impressed. That same mix of seriousness and sweetness I'd seen the week before. "I'm Daniel," I said, offering my hand. "Daniel Carter." She extended her small hand, solemn as a judge. "Lily Moreno," she replied, her voice quiet but composed. "Very pleased to meet you, sir." "Well, now that we're officially introduced," I said with a smile, "I guess we're not strangers anymore, huh? Want to split some M's and maybe a real Coke this time?" She looked up with those wide brown eyes, hopeful. "Can I have regular Coke? Not the fake kind?" "You got it. Real Coke for you, diet for me, candy for both." We sat there and talked talked as much as a 7-year-old and a middle-aged man can talk for nearly 2 hours. At one point, I went out to the car, grabbed a pen and a notepad, and taught her tic-tac-toe. She picked it up in 5 minutes, then started getting good. I let her win a few rounds just like I used to let Mason and Claire win when they were little. For a while, I was transported, not just out of that laundromat, but out of my own mess of a life. There, for a few minutes, I was back in a better time, a better version of myself, a better world. Then my thoughts wandered back to the night it all went sideways. Trasimiak standing in front of me at some overpriced lake house with the kind of look that tells you she's already made up her mind. "I'm going to sleep with Aaron Whitmore tonight," she said. "Some big-shot corporate attorney. Loaded. Charming. Smug as hell. I just need this one night. It's not love. It's not emotional. Just sex. It won't mean anything." I stared at her like she'd spoken in another language. "You can't be serious," I said. "It's one night, Dan. Don't throw away 18 years of marriage over one night." "You're doing this in front of me," I shouted. "You're choosing him over me in real time." "I'm not sneaking behind your back," she argued, like honesty was supposed to make it all okay. Then she took his hand right in front of me and walked off with him. Just like that. No hesitation. I remember standing there, paralyzed, mouth open, heart in freefall, for what felt like hours. Most likely just a minute. Then I gathered my stuff and walked out the front door, straight into the end of my life as I knew it. "Your turn, Daniel," Lily said, pulling me back to the present. I marked an X on the notepad. She grinned, poised to win again. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel quite so alone. I marked an X in the corner square, not realizing I had just handed Lily the win on a silver platter. She grinned like a poker champ and drew a confident line through her 3 O's, diagonal from top to bottom. "High five," I said, holding my hand out at full extension. She tilted her head at me with mock suspicion, then stood up on her chair to reach my hand and smacked it with a proud grin. "Hold it," she said, pausing before pulling her teddy bear into the celebration like it had helped strategize the whole thing. I stayed in the laundromat with her until her clothes were washed and folded. When she was done, I offered to give her a ride. Home it was chilly outside and I didn't like the idea of her walking alone with that busted cart, even if I'd fixed the wheel. But she shook her head. "I can't. Mommy says no rides. It's one of her rules." "Well," I said gently, "your mom sounds like a smart woman. I'd like to meet her sometime." She looked thoughtful, then said, "Maybe someday. She doesn't really go out much. Not in public." And that was it. We didn't exchange numbers, didn't plan to meet again, but I came back the next Sunday anyway. And the next, and the next. As winter shifted into spring and spring into the slow heat of summer, she was always there. So was I. Our silent agreement became routine. I started packing sandwiches PB, J for her, turkey for me plus, a few extra snacks and sodas from the vending machine. I didn't even want to eat that early, but I figured if I ate, maybe she would too. And she was so thin it made my chest ache. Eventually, I started slipping an extra sandwich into the bag and told her it was for her mom. She never questioned it, just thanked me with that quiet, steady voice of hers. She told me her full name was Lily Moreno. She was 7 years old and starting 2nd grade in the fall at a nearby elementary school. She'd never met her father, not once, didn't even know his name. Her mom, she said, worked somewhere during the day. Lily wasn't sure where, just that she was always home by the time school let out. They didn't go out much, except for occasional visits to the park if the weather was nice. Mostly, they watched television. Lily could rattle off a dozen cartoon shows I'd never heard of, and I used to consider myself a pretty hip dad. They clearly didn't have much money. No cable packages, no streaming, no outings. Sometimes, her mom went on dates. Saturday nights, usually. Lily said her mom would feed her dinner, give her bedtime instructions, and leave her alone with the rule, lights out at 9. And every Sunday morning, like clockwork, Lily would be woken up early, handed laundry money, and sent out with the cart, by herself. The more I learned about her life, the more it dawned on me my own life wasn't much better. Sure, I wasn't flat broke. I had a decent job as a lead software developer. But after alimony, child support, and the mortgage I was still partly on the hook for, I had maybe enough left over each month to buy a couple drinks with coworkers. No real social life. No dates. Not that I missed the dating scene, I missed my kids. Or, more accurately, I missed who my kids used to be before Tracy poisoned them against me. I could daydream about happy memories, but reality had a way of snapping back like a rubber band. I remembered one morning in particular, right after I walked out of that damn lake house, after Tracy humiliated me in front of everyone. The next day, I was home nursing a hangover and answering angry voicemails. 10:06 a.m. My phone buzzed. Tracy. I sighed and picked up. "Where the hell are you?" she screeched before I could say a word. I rubbed my forehead. "Still at home." "Why?" "You left me at that house. By the lake!" she screamed. "How the hell was I supposed to get home?" "I assume Aaron had a car," I said flat. "Seemed like he was handling everything else for you." She started yelling again, voice rising in pitch and volume. I pressed the end call button. Not as satisfying as slamming a landline into the wall, but it was the best I could do in the cell phone era. If I still had a landline back then, I swear I would have smashed that phone into the drywall like it owed me money. But with a cell, all you can do is hit end call and stew in silence. Not quite as satisfying. The following Sunday, I showed up as usual. Same time, same place. But Lily was late, about 15 minutes behind schedule. And when she finally walked in, something was off. She wasn't pushing her laundry cart. She was holding her teddy bear tight under her arm like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Tears streaked her face. I stood up immediately, walked over to her. "Lily, what's wrong?" She looked up at me, her voice small and trembling. "Mom didn't come home last night," she whispered. "I don't have any money for the machines." I crouched down beside her. "Does that happen a lot? Her not coming home?" She shook her head hard, eyes filling with more tears. "Number never. It's one of her rules. She always comes home." I led her over to our usual spot and unzipped the sandwich bag I had packed. I handed her a peanut butter and jelly and a juice box. She took it without a word, sniffling softly while chewing slowly. I sat across from her, trying to think. What the hell was I supposed to do now? I couldn't just leave her alone, but calling the police without a plan? That would almost certainly drop her into the foster system within 24 hours. And if they decided her mom was unfit, which, at this point, wasn't a stretch, it might mean they'd be separated permanently. I had no idea what her mom was dealing with. Maybe it was bad. Maybe it was worse than bad. But something in me didn't want to be the reason Lily lost her only parent. "How about this?" I said gently. "We leave a note for your mom at your place. We write that you're safe and with me, and that she can call me when she gets home. Then I'll bring you right back." She looked uncertain. I could see her brain working. This clearly broke some internal rule book her mother had drilled into her. But after a long pause, she gave a slow nod. I waited until she finished her sandwich. Then I folded my own laundry, loaded the car, and we drove to her apartment. It was a small, second-floor walk-up in a rundown complex. Inside, it was barely furnished, dim, and quiet. There were maybe 3 outfits total scattered on the floor, and in the hamper everything else looked like it hadn't been touched in weeks. There wasn't anything to pack, nothing to bring. I'll get you a few things, okay? I said. We'll stop at the store. Toothbrush, clothes, stuff like that. She nodded again, quiet but trusting. I scribbled a note on a piece of paper I found on the kitchen table. My name is Daniel Carter. Lily is safe and with me. Please call this number as soon as you're home. I left it right in the center of the table, hoping her mom would see it before panic set and assuming she ever came back at all. We stopped at the local Dollar General. I let Lily pick out a few shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, some underwear, socks, a new toothbrush, a pink plastic hairbrush. She didn't ask for anything fancy. But the way her face lit up, you'd have thought we were shopping at Nordstrom. Back at my place, we watched cartoons and snacked while I made lunch. Then dinner. At 9 p.m., I helped her settle into the guest room, really just the living room sofa with fresh blankets. She didn't argue, didn't whine. She was too used to taking care of herself, and that's what broke me more than anything. I decided I'd call into work the next day and take a personal day. I had a feeling this wasn't going to be over in 24 hours. Sure enough, the next afternoon, we went back to her apartment, same silence, same stillness, no sign that anyone had been there. I poked around cautiously. There were some personal items in the bedroom, but nothing recent. And then, inside one drawer of her mother's chipped dresser, I found a folder filled with old papers. Inside, Lily's birth certificate. There was no father listed. The mother's name, Fiona Ruiz. I also found a photo. A small, slightly bent picture of Fiona holding a toddler Lily, maybe 2 years old at the time. They were hugging, smiling. Fiona looked young, yearly 20 share, thick and curly, just like Lily's. But her eyes, even through the cheap print, her eyes looked tired and sad. And I couldn't help but wonder, had that look always been there? Or had it grown over the years like a shadow too long to outrun? Behind me, Lily stood silently, watching me go through her mother's things, her face calm, trusting, like she was waiting to see what I'd do next. I kept going through Fiona's things, trying to act casual, narrating my movements so Lily wouldn't feel weird about me digging through her mother's drawers. I'm just looking for anything that might help us find your mom, okay? I said gently. She gave a small nod, trusting, still too quiet. When we got back to my apartment, I sat her down in front of the Disney Channel, something light, something normal. She curled up on the couch with her teddy bear, eyes already glazing over from the cartoon. I stepped into my bedroom, shut the door behind me, and picked up the phone. It was time to call the police. "Hi, I need to report someone missing," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Her name is Fiona Ruiz. She didn't come home last night, and her daughter's been alone." The dispatcher asked me a few standard questions. Then she got to the one I dreaded. "Is the child alone now, sir?" "No," I replied quickly. "She's with me. I guess I'm her closest adult right now. A family friend, you could say. Are you willing to keep her temporarily until child services gets involved?" "If that's an option, then yes, absolutely. I'll do whatever's necessary to keep her safe." I was trying not to sound desperate, but inside, I was screaming. The thought of Lily ending up in some random foster care facility made my stomach turn. I didn't know one person who'd gone through that system and come out praising it. If there was any way I could keep her with me even just temporarily, I had to try. That's when I remembered. My boss's wife, Darlene. She was connected. Worked with nonprofits, city programs, sat on about 3 boards that had something to do with kids and families. If anyone could call in a favor, it was her. I picked up my phone again and called my boss, Sam. I'd worked for him for over 2 decades. He'd been good to me. And during my divorce, he and Darlene both stepped up in ways I didn't expect. 20 minutes later, Darlene knocked on my door. "I wanted to meet this new little friend of yours," she said with a smile, stepping inside. I introduced her to Lily, and within 5 minutes, Darlene had that kid eating out of the palm of her hand. She had the kind of warmth that made people feel safe without even trying. Lily adored her instantly. Honestly, the feeling seemed mutual. An hour later, Darlene hugged me goodbye and whispered, "I'll make some calls." She's not going anywhere. That evening, 2 officers showed up at my apartment. They were polite but didn't sugarcoat it. They didn't expect to find Fiona anytime soon, if at all. I handed them the birth certificate and the photo of Fiona and Lily. They thanked me, took down my contact info, and left. The next morning, I called into work again, but not to take another day off. Instead, I brought Lily with me. 15 years ago, our company had set up an in-house childcare center for employees. I never used it back then. My wife stayed home until Mason and Claire were old enough to manage after school. But now it felt like divine intervention. I walked Lily in, introduced her to the staff, filled out the forms with her info, using the birth certificate I'd copied. No one asked too many questions. During the day, I'd check in on her every couple hours. We'd eat lunch together in the company break room like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then I'd drive her home with me after work. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. And it did more than just keep her safe. It kept me from slipping back into that dark place, the one I'd lived in ever since my kids turned their backs on me. It helped me breathe again. I rarely saw Mason or Claire, and when I did, it was some awkward court-mandated dinner at a restaurant they barely looked up from their phones at. I didn't bring Lily to those meetups. I didn't want her exposed to whatever version of me they'd been fed. Instead, I'd leave her with Mrs. Olivares, a sweet elderly neighbor down the hall who took to Lily like a surrogate grandma. For me, Lily was a burst of light in a place that had felt like a tomb for far too long. Because she and her mom had barely gone anywhere, no money. No time, every little thing we did felt like an adventure. I'll never forget the first time I took her to a sit-down restaurant. Not fast food, not takeout, a real booth, real silverware, real menu. She stared at the cloth napkins like they were magic. When her burger came on an actual plate, her eyes got huge. It was like I'd taken her to Disneyland. Same thing when we hit the park and I bought her a soft pretzel and a soda after she ran around the jungle gym. You'd have thought I bought her a pony. It took me a second to register what she'd just said. We were in the produce aisle, halfway through our grocery list, and Lily just blurted it out like she was talking about the price of bananas. "Wow, Dad, that's a really beautiful woman. You should ask her out." I blinked, still staring down at the list. My brain hadn't quite caught up with my ears. "What now?" I asked, glancing over my shoulder. The woman she was talking about had just turned the corner with a small basket on her arm. Short, maybe 5'2", athletic build, mid-30s, maybe older, but with the kind of skin that didn't care about age. Her hair was tied back. Her jeans fit like they were made for her, and she had this kind of calm confidence that made her impossible to ignore once you did notice her. I looked back at Lily, who was watching me with that sly grin that only a kid on a mission can pull off. "I mean, you're both single, right?" she said with a shrug. "And you need someone. Besides me, I mean." Jesus. I laughed, but there was a lump in my throat too. When did she start thinking like this? Caring about my happiness? Still, I didn't want to come off like a total coward. So I turned the cart and slowly followed the woman into the cereal aisle. "Hi," I said, catching up with her as she looked at the granola. She turned, polite but slightly guarded. "Hi?" I motioned to Lily. "My daughter thinks I should ask you out." The woman smiled, the kind of smile that starts small and gets warmer the longer it lingers. "Does she?" I nodded. "I mean, I wasn't planning to hit on anyone in the cereal aisle today, but here we are." She laughed softly. "Well, I have to give your daughter credit. She has great instincts." We introduced ourselves. Her name was Valerie Jones. Worked as a CPA, lived a few blocks from us. No ring, no red flags. Before we left the store, we exchanged numbers. Lily was practically bouncing in the cart. Mission accomplished. From that moment on, everything shifted. But before Valerie, there was the year with Lily, just the two of us. She taught me Spanish, which, let me tell you, was an adventure in humility. I once tried to order a burger and Coke at McDonald's and accidentally asked for horse meat and cola. Lily laughed so hard she had tears running down her face. She couldn't understand that most people weren't bilingual. It never even occurred to her. I kept her enrolled in the same public school she'd already been attending first grade into second. It was easier for the system that way. I had her birth certificate. I listed my apartment as her address, and I was her emergency contact. No one asked many questions. I never heard a word from the police about Fiona. Not a call, not a visit, no knock on the door from social services either. Either Darlene pulled some serious strings, or the system just had too many other fires to put out. I like to think it was a little of both. Meanwhile, life went on. We created routines, shared space, made memories. One of the biggest changes? My cooking. With Lily around, beer and microwave pizza weren't going to cut it anymore. We started watching the Food Network together, cooked meals side by side. She chopped vegetables like a pro, standing on a step stool with oversized oven mitts. It was something I never did with my own kids. Back then, their mom, Olivia, did most of the cooking, and she was great at it, but she never let me near her kitchen. Said I'd ruin the chemistry. Maybe she was right. But now, with Lily, I learned. I got better, and we had fun. Real fun. That's not to say everything was perfect. It wasn't. We had our disagreements. She could be stubborn as hell, and I'm not exactly Mr. Patience. But it felt like a real family, imperfect, messy, but grounded in something solid. It became more than just my truth the day of the school open house. We were walking down the hallway, looking at science projects and art displays, when one of Lily's classmates ran up to her with her parents. "This is my mom and dad," the girl said proudly. And Lily, without even a pause, smiled and said, "This is my dad." I stopped breathing. She said it so naturally, so freely, like it had always been true, like there'd never been a time when it wasn't. Something lodged in my throat. I couldn't speak. When the girl's parents turned away, I bent down and whispered, "Did you really mean that?" She nodded. "You take care of me. That makes you my dad, right?" I wiped at my eyes, pretending I had a piece of granola stuck in my throat. She knew better. She squeezed my hand, smiled up at me, and after that day, she never called me Daniel again. And honestly, nothing in the world could have made me happier. I froze mid-step, my hand still gripping the grocery cart, and looked back at the woman Lily had just pointed out. And damn, she really was beautiful. Not the kind of beauty that screams for attention, but the kind that draws you in like gravity. Warm caramel skin, delicate features, confident posture. She was short, maybe 5'2", and had curves in all the right places. Her jeans fit like they'd been tailored. Her smile? That smile could thaw glaciers. And just as I was about to convince myself to move on and not make a fool of myself, she looked upright at me. We locked eyes, both smiled shyly, and for a second, the grocery store disappeared. "Well, aren't you going to say something?" Lily whispered loudly, nudging the cart with her elbow. "Dad?" I could feel the heat rising in my face. I wanted the linoleum floor to open up and swallow me whole. But Lily was watching, and so was the woman. So, I gave it a shot. "Hi," I said awkwardly. "I'm Daniel, and this is Lily. Like you probably just heard, she thinks I should ask you out. Or, something." The woman raised an eyebrow, but there was a playful spark in her eyes. "And what do you think?" she asked, locking onto me like she already knew the answer. Her voice was soft and rich, confident but kind. I felt myself stumble into a smile. I haven't had anyone smile at me like that in a long time. Her face lit up with a grin that could have melted every frozen dinner in the store. No ring, I noticed. I wasn't subtle, and neither was she. "You're smooth," she teased. "Not even a little bit," I confessed. Lily chimed in, switching into Spanish just to embarrass me. "Romeo here thinks he's subtle." The woman laughed again and replied in perfect Spanish, teasing Lily right back. "It was a good move, having your daughter do the scouting." I blushed. Okay, for the record, this was all her idea. I would never use my daughter to pick up women at the grocery store. "Sure," she said, still laughing. Exactly what Romeo would say. She extended her hand. Valerie Jones. Nice to meet you, Daniel and Lily. We exchanged numbers, and she agreed to have dinner with us next Saturday. Said she loved Italian food. Lily and I fist bumped as we turned the corner into the next aisle. No way that was a setup, she declared, grinning like she'd won the lottery. I couldn't stop smiling. That week crawled by. I swear every day felt like a week. But finally Saturday arrived. We cleaned the apartment from top to bottom. Lily was in full host mode, making sure every throw pillow was fluffed just right. Then we got busy in the kitchen. Homemade lasagna, garlic breadsticks, a big salad, and for dessert, Lily insisted we try making Tyrone. Cooking helped calm my nerves at least a little. But the truth was, I was rattled, nervous like a teenager before prom. It hit me as I was grating Parmesan. This is your first real date in over 20 years. Every last date I could remember was with Olivia, my ex. And before her, God, probably Marian Rizzo in college. I'd heard she got married right after we broke up. Wondered if it lasted. Probably not. Chill out, I muttered to myself. It's just dinner, not a marriage proposal. But my hands were a little shaky. My heart was thudding like a drum. And every time I thought about Valerie showing up, I had to breathe myself back down to earth. Lily, of course, was completely calm. She moved around the kitchen like a tiny general, bossing me around and double-checking everything. And that's when it hit me. Valerie would be the first adult to step into this apartment other than Mrs. Olivares, or a plumber that wasn't over the age of 60. It was a strange, thrilling thought. Dinner went better than I could have imagined. I thought the evening might be awkward first. Dates always are, but having an 8-year-old bouncing between us like an enthusiastic MC made everything smoother. Lily was an incredible icebreaker. She asked questions, made jokes, dominated the conversation like it was a late-night talk show. At one point, she took a sip of juice and looked Valerie straight in the eye. "So, were you ever married?" she asked, as casually as if she were asking what kind of ice cream she liked. I nearly choked on my drink. Valerie's eyebrows lifted, and her cheeks turned the faintest shade of pink. She looked at me, then back at Lily, and said gently, "Yes, baby, I used to be married, a long time ago, to a wonderful man, but that's in the past now." Her voice cracked just a little on the word past. I saw something flicker across her face pane. Maybe regret. But she smiled through it like a pro. Lily nodded, unfazed. "Dad was married too, and he has 2 kids besides me." I gave her a gentle nudge under the table, but it was too late. Valerie turned toward me, her expression quietly curious. Not judging, just ready. I figured it was time. I told her the short version how Olivia, my ex-wife, had cheated, how I left, how I lost nearly everything, including my kids, and how I ended up finding Lily in the most unexpected place at the most broken time of my life. She listened silently, her face unreadable at first. But when I got to the part about Lily's mother disappearing and Lily showing up alone at the laundromat, her eyes welled up, same as Lily's. They didn't speak. They just exchanged a glance that said everything. But Lily was quick to pivot. "I like your name," she told Valerie. "Valerie? Sounds like music. Were your parents musicians or something?" Valerie laughed. "Not even close. Actually, Valerie's my middle name. My real name is Marcella, but everyone calls me Valerie because of my little brother." She grinned and leaned forward, like she was about to reveal a family secret. "When we were kids, he saw a box of chocolate-covered cherries in the grocery store brand was Sella and started calling me Cherry. Because Sella sounded like Marcella, and Cherry just stuck. So now you're Cherry," Lily said with wide eyes. "That's cooler anyway." "I think so too," I chimed in. "Marcella sounds like a librarian with thick glasses and a deep voice. Cherry sounds like a jazz singer with sass and heels." "Ouch," Cherry laughed. "You are never, ever allowed to call me Marcella. Ever." We all laughed, and the rest of dinner passed like it was something we'd done 100 times before. At 9 o'clock, Lily's official bedtime, she hugged Cherry goodnight and shuffled off to her room with her teddy bear in tow. Cherry stood and smoothed out her dress. "Well," she said, "I should probably head out too." "I hope you had a good time," I said, walking her to the door. She looked over her shoulder with a soft smile. "I did, really. Maybe next time you two can come over to my place." "Deal," I said, and leaned in to give her a quick kiss on the lips, just enough to test the waters. For a moment, I thought I caught a hint of her perfume, something soft and floral, maybe gardenia. It hit me like déjà vu, like a forgotten memory from another lifetime. After she left, Lily tiptoed out of her room with a sleepy smile. "I like her," she said, voice groggy. "She feels like the right fit for us." I nodded. "Yeah, I think you're right." The next few Saturdays became unofficial family date nights. Dinner, movies, parks, even a karaoke night that I will never speak of again. But I knew eventually, if there was any real chance of something lasting with Cherry, I needed time alone with her, just the two of us. Not as the guy with the kid, but as a man, a partner. I told Lily about my plan over breakfast. She nodded like a little CEO approving a proposal. "That's smart, but I'm not staying here alone. You know what happened last time." "No way," I said. "You'll stay with Mrs. Olivares. She already said she'd love to have you over. I'd never leave you here alone, Lily. Ever." And I meant it. I would never speak ill of Fiona, Lily's mom, but I damn sure wasn't about to repeat her mistakes. I made a reservation at a quiet steakhouse Edam lighting, cloth napkins, real candles on the table. When I showed up at Cherry's apartment to pick her up, I was stunned. She opened the door wearing a silk dress that hugged her curves like it had been designed just for her. It was cut just low enough to be noticed, just short enough to make my brain stall. She wore heels that made her legs look impossibly long, and a spicy, sweet perfume that lingered just enough to make me forget how to form complete sentences. And makeup, a little more than usual. Lipstick the color of temptation. I stood there, blinking like an idiot, trying to find my words. Damn, I should have brought a bat. How the hell am I going to fight off every man in the building tonight? How the hell am I supposed to fight off all the other guys tonight? I muttered, half joking as I took in the full view of her. "If you think that tongue of yours is going to help," she said with a teasing smirk, "well, maybe you're right." We both laughed, the tension melting just a bit, and headed out. Dinner was incredible, no, just the food, but the conversation. Without Lily around, we could finally talk like adults, about real things. It felt intimate, but not rushed. Deep, but natural. Still, something felt a little off, like a part of me was missing. Cherry must have seen it in my eyes, because mid-conversation, she leaned in and asked, "You miss her right now, don't you?" I paused, then nodded. "Yeah, a little. I mean, we're always together. Between school and work, we're practically glued at the hip, and honestly, I don't mind it, at all." She smiled warmly, but didn't let it go. "You really miss the first two too, don't you? Your other kids?" That question landed harder than I expected. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I do. Not the way they left things, but yeah, it's terrible. They were just kids when it all went sideways, but they didn't even try to see it from my side. Olivia really got to them, turned them against me like I was the villain." There was silence between us for a beat. Then I turned the conversation gently. "You seem great with kids," I said. "If you don't mind me asking, did you ever want any of your own?" Cherry exhaled slowly, looked down at her plate. "Yeah, I don't mind." Her voice shifted, softer, more raw. "We were talking about it, at one point, me and my ex. Then I made the worst decision of my life. I cheated. For the thrill, for the attention, for nothing that mattered." She paused and shook her head. "I hurt the only man I ever truly loved, ripped his heart out and handed it back like trash, and I lost him, just like that." Her voice cracked on the last sentence, and tears welled up in her eyes. She tried to blink them away, but they fell anyway. I handed her my napkin. She dabbed her cheeks carefully, still holding herself together with grace. "I'm sorry," I said gently. "I didn't mean to bring up something so heavy." She gave me a shaky smile. "It's okay. I've never actually told anyone that, not even my parents. I've carried it around for so long. I guess it just felt safe to say it out loud to someone who's also been through the worst of it." I nodded. "Then no more adult pain tonight." I pushed my plate away and grinned. "What do you say, Missy? Ready to hit the dance floor and show me what you've got?" She raised an eyebrow. "Missy, what are you, 12? "Actually, I pegged you for 35. Her eyes lit up. "Seriously? I'm 42. "Well, I'm 44, so to me, you're still just a kid," I said with a wink. Cherry laughed, more relaxed now. "You're good for a girl's ego, you know that?" "I try." We left the restaurant and headed to a dance club I hadn't been to in years. Olivia and I used to go there back when our marriage still felt like something worth saving. She loved to dance. Me? I had 2 left feet when we got married, but I eventually took lessons. Sitting on the sidelines while your wife dances with other men? That'll do it. I got better. Not Fred Astaire, but respectable. Cherry was light as air on the dance floor. Elegant, natural, and damn it all, the guys in the room were noticing. We danced for 30 minutes straight. Slow, fast, even a little swing when the DJ threw on something retro. I finally needed a break and gestured toward an open table. She nodded and followed me off the floor, looking like she could have kept going all night. "I'll grab us some drinks," I said, motioning toward the bar. But before I could even step away, I saw him, vulture number 1. A guy in his mid-30s, too confident, too slick, sliding into the seat I had just vacated. I watched from the bar, pretending not to watch, but my eyes were locked on them. Cherry smiled and laughed at something he said. She wasn't moving away. That sent a chill down my spine, not jealousy. Not yet, but a whisper of it. The way you feel when you realize someone you care about could easily belong to someone else. I handed Cherry her margarita and watched as she took a long, slow sip through the straw. The kind of sip that made men notice her lips. I was more than pleased, hell. I was giddy, but I tried to keep it cool. Unfortunately, cool doesn't scare off vultures. Vulture number 2 strolled up not even 5 minutes later. He couldn't have been more than 25. He glanced at me, gave the bare minimum of acknowledgement, then turned straight to Cherry. "Would you like to dance?" he asked, all fake charm and Instagram cologne. I leaned in slightly, still smiling, and said in a low voice, "Sorry, Slick, the lady is with me." There was no threat in my voice, but there was no mistaking the message either. I don't tolerate disrespects, especially not from kids who think a button-up and hair gel make them a player. He blinked, clearly caught off guard. Sorry, man. Didn't know you two were, you know." He gave a weak shrug and slinked away. We laughed it off, finished our drinks, and went back to the floor. Another 30 minutes passed dancing, sweating, laughing. One more guy tried to butt in, but at least he had the decency to ask me first. When I said no, he just tipped his imaginary hat and said, "No blame here. She's stunning." Cherry grinned but stayed close, her hand resting lightly against my chest the entire time. When we made our way back to the table, we grabbed another round, and I was finally starting to feel the good kind of tired. Then, as we were polishing off the last sips, a final vulture swooped in. "Mind if I steal her for a dance?" he asked me directly, polite but hopeful. I looked at Cherry, raising a brow. She gave a small shake of her head. "Sorry, man. Not tonight," I said. He nodded and walked away. I took that as our cue. I drove her home, and when I parked in front of her building, she looked at me with that quiet, open expression. "You want to come up for a bit?" she asked. It was only 10:30. The night still had room left in it. I nodded. Inside, we poured a glass of red wine and settled on the couch, talking easily, nothing too heavy this time. When I stood up to leave, she rose with me. I froze. No idea what to do. Suddenly I was a teenager again. I must have looked completely lost, because she giggled and whispered, "Don't worry, Daniel. We're not in a rush." 2 weeks later, in my bedroom, we crossed that next line. It wasn't wild or reckless. It was tender, soft, quiet, because Lily was sleeping in the next room. It had been 2 years since I'd touched a woman like that, and I was out of rhythm physically and emotionally. But Valerie Cherry was kind, present, warm. When it was over, she didn't rush to leave. She curled up beside me, her head on my chest, her arm across my stomach. I woke up the next morning to find her standing in my closet, wearing one of my white dress shirts, just long enough to be modest, just short enough to make my heart skip. We headed into the kitchen, laughing quietly, and just as I reached for the coffee pot, Lily walked in, rubbing her eyes. She saw Cherry and let out a high-pitched squeal. "Cherry, you're still here." Then she ran straight into her arms, practically tackling her. They hugged tight, spinning in a slow, wobbly circle like something out of a corny commercial. I rolled my eyes, smiling. "Pancakes," I muttered. "Pancakes!" they both shouted back in unison. "Chocolate chip pancakes," I yelled louder, already grabbing the mix. 6 months later, Cherry moved in for good. By then, the three of us had become something solid, real, messy, loving, imperfect, ours. We joked that we were the 21st century Brady Bunch, but really, we were more like the Odd Trio. Black, white, Hispanic. 3 people with 3 different last names and a hell of a lot of love binding us together. Some of those issues, at least the surface ones, started to fade when, that fall, I enrolled Lily in 4th grade under the name Lily Moreno Carter. She was standing beside me at the front office desk when the secretary handed over the registration form with her new name printed on it. Her eyes went wide. She didn't say a word right away, just held it in, tight-lipped, like she wasn't sure if it was a mistake or a miracle. But the second we stepped outside, she practically exploded. "I can be a Carter like you? Is that real? Really real?" she squealed, practically jumping in place. "Well, not exactly legal yet," I admitted with a grin. "But according to the official Carter House rules, you qualify for full membership." I made air quotes around Carter House rules like it was the Constitution. Didn't matter. She launched herself into my arms and peppered my cheeks with kisses like I had just given her the moon. After the joy finally settled, she pulled back and looked at me, dead serious. "When can Valerie become Carter too?" I blinked. That caught me off guard. "You know what?" I said. "That's a very good question. I'll have to think about it." And I did. Seriously. That same week on the anniversary of our first date, I told Lily she'd be spending the evening with Mrs. Olivares. She didn't question it. She gave me a wink like she already knew something was up. Cherry had told me she'd be working late and grabbing dinner on her own. I figured I had a good window. After work, I drove straight to Jean Horowitz Jewelers. Spent over an hour designing a custom ring. Something elegant, simple, but meaningful. Something that didn't scream, "Look at me," but whispered, "You are everything." As I left the jeweler's ring receipt in hand, I swung by our favorite pizza joint to pick up dinner for Lily and Mrs. Olivares. The moment I stepped out of the car, I froze. Across the plaza, just a few storefronts down, was a trendy little bistro, and standing in its soft, golden light was Cherry. She was walking through the front door, hand in hand with a tall, well-dressed man. He was black, maybe 40, smooth-looking, confident. And she looked radiant, happy, alive in a way I hadn't seen before. I just sat there, completely paralyzed, breath caught somewhere between my ribs and my throat. I don't remember how long I stared before I realized I wasn't even breathing. The world felt like it had cracked open. Again. Eventually, I forced myself to walk into the pizzeria and place the damn order, my hands trembling like I'd just stepped into traffic. I drove home in a daze, a complete stupor. I can't recall a single thing from that evening until the moment the front door opened around 8 p.m. Cherry walked in, glowing. Her voice was light, breezy. "Hey, you won't believe who I ran into tonight. My brother John came into town total surprise and dragged me out to dinner." She dropped her bag on the counter, smiling like she'd just won a prize. But then she saw my face. Her smile faltered. "This is the story you're going with?" I asked quietly. She blinked, took a breath. "You saw us," she said, "at Salvatore's." I nodded slowly. My chest was tight, my fingers still numb from clenching the steering wheel for an hour. "And you thought?" Her voice broke. Then suddenly, her expression hardened. "You son of a—" she snapped, not in guilt, in fury. And I just sat there, stunned. Is this the new style of apology? I thought numbly. Because she wasn't pleading. She wasn't crying. She was pissed. "You don't even trust me," she hissed. "Not enough to give me the benefit of the doubt. You think I'd do this to you?" I stayed silent. "I told you I messed up before," she continued, her voice shaking. "I told you everything. I didn't hide a damn thing. I laid it all out there. And I was starting to understand. I told you I'd never make that mistake again," Cherry snapped, eyes burning. "I owned what I did. I told you everything, no lies, no filters. You said you could handle that, remember?" Her voice was sharp, but beneath it, I heard something else. Hurt. Real hurt. "I know your ex-wife did a number on you. I get it. But that's your baggage, Daniel. Not mine. Don't you dare drag me through that same mud. Don't you dare treat me like I'm her." I sat frozen on the edge of the couch as her words echoed off the walls. Apparently, Mrs. Olivares picked the perfect moment to let herself out quietly. And Lily, smart as ever, had already retreated to her room like a pro who'd seen this movie before. I wished the couch would swallow me whole. No such luck. "You're right," I said quietly. "You are absolutely right." I forced myself to meet her eyes. "I let the damage from Olivia bleed into us. I didn't trust you, and you didn't deserve that. You're not her. And if I can't see that clearly, then I don't deserve you either." She crossed her arms, lips tight, jaw clenched. I hadn't planned to do this tonight, but after screwing up so badly, I knew I had to lay all my cards down. I'd been saving the proposal for a perfect moment, but sometimes you have to create your own. I stood up slowly. "I know this probably isn't the best timing," I said, reaching into my pocket, "but I need you to know how serious I am about you." She narrowed her eyes as I walked over. "What are you doing?" "Give me your left hand," I said. Reluctantly, she extended it, palm up, still wary. I turned her hand over gently, then pulled a small, folded slip of paper from my pocket, the receipt from the jeweler, and wrapped it around her ring finger. I secured it with the elastic band from my shirt. She stared down at it like I had just taped a fortune cookie to her hand. "What the hell?" she muttered, peeling it off and unfolding the paper. Then her eyes widened. "You lousy," she squealed, laughing and crying all at once. Before I could even say another word, she pulled me down and kissed me fierce, full of fire, the kind of kiss that made my knees buckle. It made every kiss I'd ever had before feel like practice. When we finally came up for air, she turned and called out, "Lily, come out here, baby." Lily peeked from the hallway, clearly expecting an emotional battlefield. Instead, she was met with Cherry grinning from ear to ear and waving the receipt like a golden ticket. "Look what your dad did," Cherry beamed, holding it out to her. "I'm gonna be a Carter too." Lily's scream hit a frequency I'm not sure adult ears are built to handle, but I didn't care. It was pure joy. They jumped, they hugged, they twirled like the floor had turned into a trampoline. My apartment looked and sounded like Christmas morning. Then Cherry grabbed her phone and, with zero warning, shouted into the speaker, "You better come meet your future son-in-law." A few minutes later, the door buzzed. Cherry opened it, and there he was, John. Her brother, And thank God, actually her brother. Because the guy was a tall, sculpted, Hollywood handsome son of a gun. Seeing him now, I couldn't blame myself for assuming the worst earlier. He had that whole too perfect vibe, but he carried it with warmth. The kind of guy people just liked on sight. He shook my hand, and then pulled me into a bear hug. "A handshake's for friends," he said, squeezing my shoulder. "But a hug is for family. And you better believe if you hurt her, I'll beat the life out of you." He tightened his grip just slightly for emphasis. My ribs got the message. "Crystal clear," I wheezed. "Nice to meet you too." Cherry quickly caught him up on everything, how I panicked at the sight of them, how I thought he was a date, and how I almost let my insecurity ruin everything. He looked at me, feigning surprise. "And you're still alive? Damn, you're lucky. That woman's death stare has kills to its name." Lily chimed in from behind the couch. "I ran to my room as soon as I saw it. Mrs. Olivares did too." John turned to Lily and looked her up and down with a big grin. "So this is the famous Lily Carter I've been hearing about," he said, lowering to her level. "I've always wanted nieces and nephews. I think you'll fit in just fine." Lily gave him a shy smile, then beamed, her face lighting up like sunrise. "Does this mean I can—" she started, her voice trailing off. "Does this mean I can call you Mom?" Lily asked, her voice a whisper so soft it almost didn't make it across the room. Cherry didn't answer with words. She just stepped forward and wrapped Lily in her arms, holding her tight like something she'd been waiting her whole life to do. And they stood there, not moving, not speaking, just crying each for their own reasons. Tears for the past, tears for what was lost, tears for what they had somehow found in each other. It would take years for the state to catch up to what we already knew. Even with Darlene's help in every form and background check possible, we had to wait until Lily turned 16 before we could legally adopt her. By then, she could have filed for emancipation and moved out on her own, but no one in that room was worried about that. The law eventually caught up with what we'd already built, a family. Not because of blood, not because of paperwork, but because we chose each other, every day, through every mistake. And then just like that, life threw another surprise at me. It had been over 6 years since I'd heard from either of my biological kids. No texts, no calls, no birthdays, nothing. So when my phone rang on a random Thursday afternoon and I heard a familiar voice on the other end, I froze. "Dad, it's me, Haley." I didn't even look at the caller ID. I always answer the same. "Hey, I'm here." "Please don't hang up," she said quickly. "Relax, baby. I would never hang up on you. Or your brother." There was a pause. My heart pounded. "Is something wrong?" I asked. "No," she said. "Actually, it's something good. I'm getting married. Next month. And I want to invite you." I sat down on the edge of the bed, stunned. This was my little girl, and I was so far removed from her life that I didn't even know the man she was marrying. Images of her in pigtails flashed in my mind, her crawling into bed during thunderstorms. Now she was planning a wedding, and I had no idea who she'd become in the years between. The last time I'd seen her or Ethan, we'd been sitting in a booth at Ethan's favorite burger joint for his 16th birthday. It had gone downhill the moment the food arrived. As usual, they barely spoke. I tried everything: dad jokes, old stories, asking about school, even offering to buy them a puppy just to get a smile. Finally, just as dessert hit the table, Ethan looked up and said flatly, "Dad, I'm 16 now. Court visits are done. Haley and I don't have to see you anymore, and we've talked about it. We don't want to." I sat there frozen. "You abandoned us to protect your stupid pride," he said coldly. "So take your pride and shove it." I'll say this for him: he never raised his voice, didn't make a scene, but he couldn't look me in the eye either. Haley just stared back and forth between us, her lips pressed into a flat line. I knew that look. It was Olivia's. Cold, controlled. Not her daughter's. Not really. I took a slow breath. "I knew this would come eventually," I said. "I could practically see the fingerprints. Your mother's been working you two like puppets for years." Ethan didn't flinch. Neither did Haley. "You understand what vows are, right?" I said softly. "That your mom broke ours and then tried to make me the bad guy?" I looked at them both. "She convinced you I walked away because I didn't care. But the truth is, I left because staying would have killed me from the inside out. It would have crushed my soul and made me less than the man I am. And you'd have seen it eventually once you were older, once you lived enough life to understand that some lines can't be uncrossed." They didn't respond, and I knew nothing I said would change their minds. Not right then. "If this is what you both want," I added, "then I won't beg, but I won't take the blame for what your mother did, either." That was the last time I saw them. Until now. "Dad?" Haley said again, pulling me out of the memory. "Yeah, sweetheart? Don't you want to come to the wedding?" I let out a breath. Of course I want to come. I've been putting money aside for this day, even if I didn't know when it would come. "You don't need to worry about money," she said. "Bob's covering everything." I blinked. "Bob?" I asked, my voice tight. "As in, Bob? I guess," Haley said slowly, her voice dipping with tension. "But we're talking about Robert Goldstein III, right?" There it was. The name. She said it like it left a sour taste in her mouth, like even she knew how that sounded. Then her tone shifted again. Something softer, almost apologetic. "You didn't know, did you?" she said. "Mom married Bob like 6 years ago, pretty soon after we stopped seeing you." I couldn't speak. Not at first. Robert Goldstein III. That smug bastard. The man who slept with my wife under the pretense of just one night. The man who cracked the foundation of my family, destroyed my marriage, helped poison my kids against me, and then married my ex-wife. I could feel the heat rise behind my eyes. Not from jealousy, from insult, from injustice. So that's what it was all for? I lose my home, my kids, my marriage, and she gets to walk off into the sunset with the guy who helped burn it all down? "All this," I said, my voice low and steady, "because of my pride. That's the story, right? Haley, every time your brother says I should have just swallowed it, apologized, moved on, this is the part he forgets. The part where I wasn't the one who broke us." "Dad," she said gently, "I'm not calling to fight. I'm not inviting you to cause problems. You won't be giving me away, and you won't be front and center. I just want you to be there. That's it, okay?" I took a breath, then another. "Okay," I said finally, "but on one condition." "What?" "That I can bring my family." There was a pause. "Your family?" she asked, cautious. "Yes," I said. "Even a loser like me has managed to build something back. I have a wonderful wife and an amazing daughter. You'll like them if you give them a chance." Silence stretched on the other end. For a second, I thought the line had gone dead. "I didn't know," she said finally. "About them. You never told me or Ethan." I hadn't. I didn't want Olivia knowing. I didn't want her using Cherry or Lily as leverage or turning their existence into ammunition. "I have a daughter," I said. "Her name's Lily. She's 16 now. Adopted. I've been raising her for 9 years. I almost literally found her on the street. She knows everything about you. About Ethan. About your mom. About the family I had. And the family I have now." "She knows we exist?" Haley asked, sounding dazed. "She does, and she's excited to meet you." There was another long pause, but when Haley spoke again, her voice had that spark of curiosity I hadn't heard in years. "Well then," she said slowly, "I guess I'm looking forward to meeting the rest of your family too." The wedding was held on a Saturday evening, in one of those grand, columned churches that look like they've hosted more senators than sermons. Everything was top tier. Clearly, Bob didn't skimp on his stepdaughter's big day. We arrived minutes before the ceremony started and took a seat in the very last row. Not because we were ashamed, but because I wasn't there to steal attention, and the girls Cherry and Lily respected that. As Haley and her fiancé, Mark, walked back down the aisle after the vows, I caught her glance. She smiled, soft, subtle. Then she blew me a kiss. We made our way to the reception and found a table tucked in the back corner. It wasn't exactly glamorous placement, especially considering how much effort Cherry and Lily had put into this day. They'd had a spa day on Friday, bought new dresses. Cherry looked elegant, sensual, calm, like she belonged at the head table. Lily, wearing makeup for the first time, looked 21, which nearly gave me a stroke. But they didn't complain when we were seated in the shadows. They just smiled and made space for everyone else to shine. I got us drinks wine for Cherry, a Coke for Lily, and headed back to the table, where, as I'd expected, the trickle of people stopping by to say hello had begun. Old friends, former co-workers, people from my past life. Everyone wanted a word, a glance, a little piece of nostalgia. Then I saw them. Rhonda and William, Olivia's parents. Rhonda was already crying by the time she reached me. She hugged me like a long-lost son. William clapped me on the back with so much force, I nearly spilled my wine. I introduced Cherry and Lily. They both looked a little stunned, unsure how to respond. I mean, I was married to their daughter for 18 years. But they smiled politely, and I could feel the shift, the acknowledgement, the unspoken truth that time really had moved on. I didn't work the room, didn't try to reclaim old ground. The girls and I just stayed at the table and let people come to us. But I'm no fool. I saw the stares, heard the whispers. I was the guy who showed up with a stunning black woman and a radiant Latina daughter, neither of whom bore my last name. And while most people said all the right things, some expressions don't lie. I could feel the eyes on us the second we sat down, dozens of familiar faces registering the reality that I had shown up with a gorgeous black woman and a radiant Spanish-speaking teenager. Some looked curious, some impressed, some clearly uncomfortable. But the best reactions? Those came from the wives of my old friends. You'd have thought I'd walked in with a supermodel on my arm and a crown on Lily's head. They didn't know what to make of it. Maybe they figured I'd hit the jackpot and brought a trophy wife to make a statement. Or maybe they couldn't believe someone like me had pulled someone like her. And then, of course, the main event. Tracy and Bob arrived. The happy hosts. And even after 10 years, I could read Tracy like a book written in bold type. One glance at Cherry, and I saw it in her eyes. Dislike, sharp and instant. Was Cherry too black, too beautiful, too magnetic? Or was it simpler? Was Cherry everything Tracy used to be and no longer was? Flat stomach, long legs, a woman who turned heads without trying. And worst of all for Tracy, Cherry had chosen me. She didn't even seem to notice at first that this was the first time we'd stood face to face in over a decade. But when I stepped forward and kissed her on the cheek, she jolted out of her autopilot. "Oh, Daniel," she said, adjusting her heels. "These new shoes are killing me. I'm sorry if I seem distracted." "No worries, baby," I said smoothly. "You look amazing." She didn't, but I was raised with manners. "Let me introduce you to my family." I gestured to Cherry and Lily. "This is Valerie, and this is Lily." I turned to Bob with a warm smile, extending my hand. "And Bob, thank you. You've been the catalyst for my current happiness. I couldn't have done it without you." Cherry winced. So did Bob. But Lily? She caught my sarcasm and gave me the sneakiest little elbow jab, followed by a mischievous grin. That girl was sharp. We all chatted for about 5 minutes, saying everything and nothing. Then Tracy and Bob drifted away as the bride and groom entered the room. As they passed, Lily subtly shook her head, her eyes flicking toward Tracy with the same thin smile I'd learned to wear years ago. She wasn't impressed, and neither was I. Then Haley reached me, my daughter, my once lost girl. She walked straight into my arms and hugged me tightly. No hesitation, no pause. I was stunned. And when she pulled back, her cheeks were wet. "Forgive me, Dad," she whispered, "for everything." I blinked, trying to speak, but nothing came out. "I never understood," she said. "Not until today. Right when I was repeating my vows, it hit me. I saw what you must have felt when Mom broke hers. I felt it. The weight of those words. And suddenly, it all made sense why you walked away, why you couldn't just swallow it. You were right, Dad. You were absolutely right. She was wrong not just for what she did, but for blaming you. And I helped her do it. So did Ethan. And I'm so sorry." I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat damn near cutting off my air. I hadn't cried in decades, not since tearing my knee in 10th grade during a soccer match. But this came damn close. I put a hand on her shoulder. "How about we start small?" I said hoarsely. "And you introduce me to this guy you made the vow with." She sniffed, laughing softly. "Of course." She turned to the tall, polite young man standing patiently beside her. "Dad, meet Mark Westinghouse, the man of my dreams. Mark, this is Daniel Carter, me real dad." Mark extended his hand, and I took it. A firm grip, honest eyes. We shook hands like men who understood what was at stake. And then I smiled. "Pleasure to meet you, son. Now, do me the honor of letting me dance with my daughter." I did what every father does when meeting the man about to marry his daughter. I shook his hand and made sure he knew, in no uncertain terms, that if he ever hurt her, he'd regret it. He smiled and nodded, understanding exactly what I meant without needing a second warning. Then I introduced him to the people who made up the rest of my world. Cherry, my love. Lily, my daughter. They all exchanged greetings as the band began to play something light and celebratory. Haley turned to me with a playful grin, tilting her head toward the dance floor. "Dad, care to dance?" I laughed. "I'm completely fascinated," I said, standing and taking her hand like we were about to do something out of a classic movie. We stepped onto the dance floor, and the crowd, which had already stirred a little when Haley acknowledged me earlier, now let out a louder murmur. Maybe they were surprised. Maybe some of them were annoyed, but I didn't care, because for the first time in years, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Sure, it was cheesy wedding DJ music, what I like to call children's music, but I knew how to dance. All those years married to a woman who lived for dancing meant I wasn't a total klutz on the floor. Haley's jaw dropped. "You can dance?" she asked, amazed. "Your mother demanded lessons," I replied. I survived. We danced 2 full songs, spinning and laughing like we hadn't lost 6 years between us. By the end, a small crowd had gathered to watch. Some clapped, some looked stunned, some even smiled for real. As the second song ended, Haley threw her arms around me again. Another hug, another soft sob in my shoulder. And just like that, the weight of a decade started to lift. Cherry and Lily were waiting at the edge of the dance floor with bright, beaming smiles. I walked straight over, grabbed their hands, and pulled them both out with me. We became a trio again, moving, spinning, laughing. People around us joined in, but we stayed together, unified, solid. "Well, look at you, Mr. Rhythm," Cherry teased, leaning close to my ear. "Who knew marrying off your daughter could be so much fun?" I grinned and glanced down at Lily. "Let's wait a few years before I go through this again. My heart's barely hanging on." "Turn me loose, old man," Lily fired back, smirking. And then she twirled under my arm like she'd been born on a stage. We danced for 6 more songs. 6. Eventually, I retreated to the table, grabbing a cold Jack on the rocks and letting my feet finally rest. Cherry and Lily stayed out there, still spinning under the lights. I watched them, heart full, when I suddenly felt a hand on my shoulder. I didn't have to turn around. I knew that touch. "This should have been our day," Tracy said, leaning close to my ear. "Not Bob's, not yours, ours." I didn't look at her. "You threw away 18 good years," she continued. "For what? Because you didn't love me enough?" I took a slow breath. My gaze never left the dance floor. "No," I said calmly. "You didn't love me enough not to do it. Especially not after I looked you in the eye and told you exactly what it would cost." She scoffed, but I kept going. You didn't love me enough to respect the vows. But hey, you got Bob, and he's a solid guy, right? And I got Cherry, and Lily, and a life I never saw coming. I turned my head just slightly, my voice soft but firm. To quote the Rolling Stones, you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you get what you need. She was quiet. You were an asshole then, she muttered. And you still are now. Maybe, I shrugged. But I'm a lucky one. I didn't lose a single minute of sleep over your bad decision. And no, I wasn't expecting an apology. I'm fine. I didn't wait for a reply. I turned back toward the dance floor, back to the two women who never gave up on me. Months later, Ethan came back into my life too. He'd fallen in love. For real. And I guess when you've got your own heart on the line, loyalty becomes easier to understand. He called me out of the blue and said, "We need to talk." I invited him over. Simple as that. He showed up at the door holding a bottle of Jack Daniel's Tennessee Honey. "Haley said you liked this stuff," he said with a sheepish grin. "She figured it was a good peace offering." "I figured I should make you a peace offering," Ethan said, handing over the bottle of Tennessee Honey as I ushered him into the apartment. We hadn't really talked since Haley's wedding, just a few polite exchanges. That had been more than 2 years ago. She and I had found our way back to each other. But Ethan and I, we were still stuck somewhere between tension and silence. He looked older, sharper, less angry, and somehow more like me than I ever remembered seeing. "I asked Sasha to marry me," he said after a few minutes of small talk. "And I guess that made me think about you and Mom." I nodded, waiting, letting him come to it on his own. "Haley's been saying for years that you were the one who got hurt," he continued. "Not Mom. But I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to believe it. Because if I did, it meant I'd have to hate her. And I just couldn't do that." I looked at him gently. "I never asked you or Haley to pick sides. I just wanted you both to understand why I had to go." He nodded, eyes fixed on the floor. "I get it now. After that talk with Sasha about fidelity, about trust, it hit me. I was a complete idiot, Dad. I blamed the wrong person, and I'm sorry." We sat for hours after that, just me and my son, catching up, finally leveling with each other. Cherry cooked us a full dinner, and the four of us, Cherry, Ethan, Lily, and me sat around the table like it had always been that way. By the end of the night, Ethan was too buzzed to drive, and Cherry made it crystal clear that no one drives her car drunk, not even if they're carrying a bottle of peace. He crashed on the couch like he'd done 100 times as a kid, and in that moment, everything felt whole again. A few months later, we all gathered for Ethan's wedding. Cherry, Lily, Haley, and I sat at the groom's family table with Haley glowing beside her husband Mark, pregnant with their second child. Our first grandkid, little Brent, sat beside Tracy, of all people, who now found herself awkwardly solo. Bob had ditched her for a younger, shinier model about a year prior. Funny how that works. What goes around really does come back around. Haley and Ethan kept me filled in on Tracy from time to time. They learned to keep it light, just updates, nothing heavy. I told them early on, don't play messenger. We're adults. If she ever wants to talk, she knows how to use a phone. Lily flew in for the wedding. She was a freshman at Michigan State and didn't even hesitate when I asked if she'd come. She said she wouldn't miss her big brother's wedding for anything. It still stuns me sometimes how close she is with Haley and Ethan now. They laugh like siblings, bicker like siblings, protect each other like siblings. They even joke that she's my favorite child, which makes Cherry roll her eyes and me laugh awkwardly. But if I'm being honest, there's truth in it. Lily and I share something that's hard to explain, something built from the worst moments in both of our lives. We didn't come together by blood. We came together through survival. And that bond, it's unbreakable. Even Cherry sees it. She's mentioned it more than once. I wouldn't wish the childhood Lily had on anyone. I wouldn't wish the pain I went through on any father. But I also know, without those moments, we might never have found each other, might never have become what we are. That kind of adversity can crush people. Or it can make them stronger, closer, grateful. It did all of that for us. Same with Cherry and me. We've both been burned, scarred, tested. We both know what it feels like to lose everything, which is probably why we never take anything for granted. And now that Lily's out of the house, Cherry's discovered a whole new side of freedom. Let's just say, she wasted no time taking advantage of our empty nest. The first week after Lily moved into her dorm, Cherry turned our bedroom into a scene from a romance novel minus the soft fade-outs. The way she throws herself into love and to use it makes my whole body ache in the best ways. There are mornings we both roll out of bed sore and grinning, walking funny like two teenagers who got carried away. Once the wedding wrapped up and the formalities were over, Cherry grabbed my hand and whispered, "Let's go dance one more time." And we did. I hit the dance floor again, couldn't help myself. The music, the mood, the moment. Lily had already partnered up with one of Ethan's groomsmen, much to Ethan's visible discomfort. Just before they started dancing, Ethan leaned in and said, loud enough for me to hear, "If any of you mess with my dad's favorite child, I swear, you'll answer to me." I couldn't help but laugh. It wasn't just funny, it was poetic. The same kid who once told me to shove my pride was now out here defending Lily like a real brother. After a few more songs, I was about ready to call it a night and head back to our table feet sore, shirt clinging to my back. But then Lily gave me a look. "One of those, please. Just one more looks." So, of course, I stayed. And we danced. One more time. While we moved together in rhythm, I glanced around the room and that's when I noticed it. Cherry and Tracy, two women with polar opposite energies, sitting less than 10 feet apart. Not a single word exchanged, not even a glance. The silence between them was louder than the music. "Feel that frost over there?" Lily whispered, dancing close. I grinned. Insightful. Eventually, I returned to the table. Cherry stood up just as I sat down and went to join Lily again on the floor. I watched them from across the room. Cherry's grace, Lily's joy. They lit up the room like the mother-daughter team they truly were. Then I felt a light tap on my shoulder. Of course, round two. I turned my head, and there she was. Tracy. Here we go, I thought. She leaned in slightly, her voice low but heavy with something bitter. "So," she said, "you gonna gloat now? About Bob leaving me?" I didn't even flinch. "Not my circus," I said calmly. "Not my monkeys." Her face twitched, trying to read if I was mocking her. "I know this might blow your mind," I added, "but I rarely think about you. At all." That stopped her, just for a second. "I don't wish you any harm, Tracy," I continued. "I really don't, but I also don't care. We had 18 good years, and that was many, many years ago. I've got a new life now, a better one, and I don't see the point in wasting time thinking about the past." I looked over at the dance floor again, Cherry spinning Lily with the ease of someone who'd been part of her life forever. And then I turned back to Tracy. That's when I saw it. Not anger, not pride. Fear. Real fear. The kind that seeps in late in life. The fear of growing old alone, of watching the walls close in and realizing you bet everything on the wrong man and lost. She hadn't calculated this part. She thought I'd cave. She thought I'd break under the pressure of custody battles, public shame, and financial loss. But I didn't. I rebuilt. Stronger. Happier. Whole. For a fleeting second, I almost felt bad for her. But then I remembered if the roles had been reversed, she would have buried me without hesitation. "You know," I said as I stood up from the table, "I was an asshole then, and I'm still an asshole now." I looked down at her, smiled faintly. "But I'm an asshole who's doing just fine." Then I turned and walked back to my girls, my real family, waiting for me on the dance floor, where the light was warm and the music still played. End of story. Subscribe to our channel so your second half doesn't cheat on you. And stick around because this story was just the beginning. If you're under 18, maybe skip the next one.